Okay, today we're going to be working on a 2006, it's a Kia Sportage. We're going to be changing the front brake pads as well as the front brake rotors. I'm going to show you exactly how to do it step by step. If you follow my directions, you're not going to have any problem. It'll go very smoothly for you. A couple of things you will have to do that you probably won't see a lot of other guys do. I'm going to show you change the hardware kit on the brake pads, where the pads fit into the mounting bracket. Also very important is you have to lubricate the sliding pins, and you also need to lubricate where the brake pads themselves touch into the mounting bracket and into the hardware. Very important because you want everything to slide nice and freely once you put it all back together. If it binds up or it sticks, you're going to wind up prematurely wearing out your brakes and overheating your rotors, and you're going to wind up with a pulsating brake pedal. So let me get some tools. I'm going to get started on it. I'm going to show you exactly what to do step by step. So let's grab some tools and get started. Okay, the first thing I'm going to show you how to do is it's going to save you a couple of minutes down the road, later on. You're going to put a screwdriver in here in the back of the brake pad where it fits right in here, and you'll see where it comes through, right on the side over here, right in the very edge right here. And what you do is you hold slight pressure on this, and it'll slowly push the piston back into the bore. You can see the caliper starting to push back in. See how it's pushing back? This is saving you later on some time, because when you're ready to put it back together, you'll need to push the piston back in order to accommodate the new brake pads and the new rotor. But in this case here, you just eliminated that step by pushing it back before you do anything. And at the same time, we're checking to make sure that these slide pins are working the way they're supposed to. After you push this back in, the piston, this should slide fairly smoothly, which, as you can see, it does. Top as well as bottom, it slides. We are going to lubricate these pieces here. That's what I was just telling you about lubricating it. And we're going to replace this hardware in here too, because that way the brake pads, when they slide back and forth on here, they slide nice and freely. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take out this bolt right here. This probably is a 13 or 14 millimeter, and the same thing over here. It looks actually like a 14 millimeter. And basically what you're going to do is you just get on here with the ratchet, and you loosen this, and you loosen this one here at the same time. Now sometimes when you try to take these bolts out up here, sometimes they're pretty tight and you can't remove them, or you'll try to remove them and you'll notice that this bolt in the back, this nut right here in the back, will rotate too. Sometimes it'll spin like this. If it does, you just slide a wrench over the top of it and you can hold it from spinning. Alright, but in this case that's not happening, so we're just going to remove these bolts here and here. And don't lose these, because we're going to need these to put it back together. Now after you get this off, it's always a good idea not to leave the caliper hanging, because if it's hanging, you run the possibility of damaging the brake hose. So let me grab a hanger, and we're going to pull it up and out of the way so that it won't be damaged. What I usually have is just a piece of hanger like this that you can actually secure it and hang it up over here, and you can take your caliper and pull it up and out of the way like that, so you can just secure it out of the way. And as you can see, the piston is pushed back in. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to come underneath the car here, or truck in this case, and we're going to remove this bolt and this bolt, and we're going to take this mounting bracket off the car so we can remove the rotor. Now, just so you know, if you were just changing the brake pads, you don't have to take this caliper mounting bracket off. You just take your brake pads out. They pry out actually a little bit tight, but they come out like this. Take this one out. And you do the same thing back here. Pry it out. And then if you're just changing just brake pads, at this point you would just replace your brake hardware, lubricate it, and put your new brake pads in. But in this case, we're changing the rotor, so we are taking the whole thing apart. So let me take these bolts out in the back and we're going to get that rotor off. All right, those bolts that I was telling you about in the back of the rotor, they're actually 17 millimeter. You break them both loose. Sometimes they're pretty tight, but you take them out. Don't lose these bolts because we're going to need these again to put this mounting bracket back onto the car. Now, the rotor itself is held on by 2 screws that are in here. These screws have to come out. I use something called an impact driver to get these out, but if you don't have a driver, which most people don't, you can take anything, a screwdriver or brass drift or anything made of steel, put this on here like this and hit it a couple of firm shots on each one. And most of the time you can unscrew this with just a regular Phillips head screwdriver. This is an impact driver, so it's works a little bit differently. You put it in like this and you hit it, and it actually rotates it right out. Same thing on this one here. And it takes them right out. You can do it with a screwdriver. This is a little bit easier, goes a little quicker. Right? And again, we're going to need these 2, so don't lose them. We're going to put it back together with that also. Next thing we got to do is you got to take this rotor off. And most of the time these rotors are pretty tight on there because of the rust on there. You can bang it in the back to get it off. Or what I normally do is take a long pry bar, put it against the mounting bracket where the rotor, where the mounting bracket connects onto the knuckle, and you put slight pressure on this. Here you pull a little bit and you tap on the rotor and it pops right off. So I'm just going to block you for 1 second here while I do this. And it comes right off. Just watch you don't hit these studs and damage the studs, because you will have to replace the studs then. Again, if you're removing a rotor and you're going to throw it away and replace it, then you can bang it in the back with a hammer and just knock it right off. Alright, so we take this off. Make sure back here is nice and clean and not a lot of rust on there. This is in very good condition, so we're not going to have to do anything with that. But if it was rusty, you'd clean it up with some sandpaper. So let me grab the new rotor and we'll put it back together. Okay, to put the rotor on, there's only one way the rotor can go on. You have to line these screws up with the screws that you previously took out, and there is only one way you can go on. Put the rotor on, and you're going to screw the screws in with your Phillips head screwdriver. In this case, I'm going to be doing it with a driver because it saves me just a little bit of time. You screw all the way down, and you tighten it as tight as you can with a screwdriver. Doesn't have to be real tight, just snug it in there. I'm going to make it just a little bit tighter with the driver, but you can just tighten it by hand. Alright, that's it. So now your rotor's reattached. The next thing we're going to do is, remember we talked about that hardware kit, replacing the hardware kit. It's fairly easy. You just take these clips here and you pull them off, and then you replace. The new clip just goes right on here like this, and it just pushes on, and your new clip is in. Pull it off. If there's a significant amount of rust underneath here, you want to clean that rust off, but in this case we're looking pretty good. Right? Again, just put it on, and it pushes right over the top like this. And then we are going to lubricate everything before we put it back together with a little bit of grease. Anywhere that the brake pad is going to touch, we put some grease on, like that. And then we take these slide pins here, pull them out. And then we lubricate the slide pins. Put them back in. Same thing here. Put it back in. And then just make sure when it pushes in that the boot goes back up onto the bolt where it's supposed to be, which it did. Alright, now we're going to reattach the mounting bracket onto the car. Screw it always in by hand, as tight as you can by hand first before you put a ratchet on it. Tighten it up with your 17mm socket, like that. Same thing on the top one. Alright, so that's nice and tight. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to reinstall our brake pads. And you'll always want to make sure that your indicator is on the correct side. This indicator is on top here, so that's how it's going to go. We know it's an inner brake pad because we have the circle here where the caliper was touching. And the same thing on the outer brake pad too. There's only one way it can go on. You slide it in and you push it right into position like that. And we're all set. We lubricated it so we know they're going to slide nice and freely. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put a caliper back on the car, like this. And we slide it down and we're going to reattach our two 14mm bolts right here. Right there. And then we tighten it up with the ratchet. Okay, and that's it. We're all set. All right, let me just point out one thing to you. If you try to tighten these, if you try to tighten this bolt in right here, and this one rotates, then what you can do is hold that with a wrench while you tighten these up together. And that's it, you're all set. Alright, let me just recap what we did to it here. We put the rotor on, we tightened up both of these bolts. We put our mounting bracket on, we tightened up both of the 17mm bolts. We replaced our hardware kit right here with the new ones. We lubricated every place that the brake pad touches, and we tightened up the bolts in the back of the caliper here. That's it, we're all set. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go across to the other side, and we're going to replace the brakes on the other side, and we're going to wrap this job up. Before you drive the car though, make sure you pump up your brake pedal so that you have a nice firm brake pedal, and this piston pushes back out to where it's supposed to be. Alright, good luck. If you can need any advice, just drop me a line, and I'll be more than happy to discuss any kind of problems with you. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.